So, okay. So hopefully everybody can see my screen, and that toolbar should go away. Not that it's covering anything. So this first slide is just a picture. We always say that the first duty of firefighters is fire prevention, fire safety. This is just a picture. I stumbled on this just yesterday, looking through a drawer in our fireproof safe cabinet for some older stuff of the 2010 kindergarten class. But one of the things we do, but we don't do nearly enough of it, especially in the past 5 years or so, is fire prevention and fire safety, going into school, giving talks to the younger people. So that's just one thing. Switch to some history. Fire departments were originally started by insurance companies. They found that by having fire departments, the cost of claims went down. The last time I know anybody's really checked Tamworth, because I did it, but it was about 20 years ago. And they figured out that the average insurance saving was $4 saved for every $1 spent to maintain our current insurance rating. No one's checked recently that I know of, but I feel certain that it's still a good value. Everything costs more today, but relatively speaking, we probably spend a similar amount of money on equipment. Personnel costs have gone up in the last few years, jumped up a little more this year because we became paid hourly as of July 1st of 2022. So with that extra cost, plus we've had a paid chief since 2005, I don't think it's probably 4-to-1, but I bet it's 2-to-1. I'd like to have time to figure that out. You have to make some assumptions, of course, as to, average insurance policies people have and things like that. I worked with the state insurance commission to get some stuff, but I bet it's still 2-to-1. But that's the reason to have a fire department. You can justify it in dollars and cents, in my mind. And if you can't, then you shouldn't be spending as much money. That's the way I think. I'm a very, very money-driven person. So this is where our 4 fire stations are. The one Lancet's up here in the north, of course. Chicago is in the east. Tamworth Village is right in the center, and then South Tamworth in the south. You can see how they're spaced out, and that's to try to get everybody within 5 miles of a rated fire station. And that ensures that property owners all receive the same insurance rating. So that's the goal. That's why every once in a while somebody suggests, well, why don't you get rid of 1 or 2 stations and just put everything in the middle and so forth. But people's insurance ratings would go up. And in all honesty, if you break it down dollars and cents, these outlying stations, they don't really cost much. The middle one costs a bunch to heat. That's the one has the meeting room, the chief's office, the radio room, all of that, and it's bigger. The outlying ones, South Tamworth uses, 300, maybe more in a bad year, gallons of fuel oil. One Lancet uses a little less. Chicago is a little less. So there's not a lot of money to maintain the stations. Obviously, you have to have trucks in them that are rated. And one thing I'll bring up, since this is now Tamworth Fire Rescue, and we'll get to that evolution in a minute, there's really no way to justify financially EMS costs. How much we should spend on EMS is really a matter of what we want for service. It's an awful thing to say, but funerals are cheaper than hospital stays. So it's just the way it is. So in the beginning, there are 4 separate precinct departments, each governed by its own board of commissioners. The 4 precincts obviously were South Tamworth, Chicago, Onalancet, and Tamworth Village. 1949 town meeting, Article 12 said to see if the town will vote to elect 5 fire wards and raise the appropriate sum of $1,500 for the establishment and maintenance of a town fire department, provided for in Chapter 175 of the RSAs. And that's still the current, it's still Chapter 175 that we're under. And that passed. So that was the beginning of having a town fire department. 1949. And then in the 1949 annual report, it actually tells, who the fire wards were. And this wording on the slide I took right from that old annual report. You can see that the 5 fire wards is 1 for each of the 4 sections in town, 1 at large. Goes on to say that Francis Cleveland was appointed chief fire ward, and Charles Remick was the chief of the town fire department. It also goes on to say how South Tamworth, Chicago, and Onalancet precincts all voted to turn over their equipment to the town, and it lists their estimated values. It was a few more years before the Tamworth Village precinct did the same thing. So just to compare 1949 to 2022, in 1949, the government body was the fire wards, equivalent of commissioners, shows who they were, and now it's the same thing. The fire wards are the governing body, and those people are the ones who are the fire wards right now. So the legislative body, or in other words, the voters of Tamworth, elect the Board of Fire Wards to have the fiscal and administrative authority over the department. The Board of Fire Wards hire the chief, who then appoints his or her line officers with the approval of the fire wards. Questions and complaints come up about somebody driving too fast or whatever, they go to the chief or to the fire wards, and the board has to deal with that stuff. Even one thing I want to point out is even with a 5-member board, it takes a considerable effort to keep up with the budgeting and the planning and the administrative aspects of today's ever evolving emergency services. There's new rules every year. Every year the legislature is in session, they make more rules, and they don't very often get rid of any. So in 1972, that was the first year that I could find that the rescue squad got money from the town. Now, the rescue squad was started by a bunch of volunteers raising money. I can remember them raising money, some of the fundraiser things they did. But this was the first year that the town appropriated $2,000 for the rescue squad. And as with other departments that are not governed by a specific board elected by the townspeople, the rescue squad, of course, was automatically under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen. The initial meetings were in Brett Chase's barbershop. He was sort of the instigator of it, which was in the basement of what is now the UU Church. Those of you been around, it's where I got my haircut there for years, and Brett drove my school bus. I'm not sure what year she joined, but I believe we happened to have the first female member of the rescue squad on the Zoom call, and that was Helen Steele of Onalancet. And this is a report for the 1972 for the rescue squad. It should 19 auto accidents. That's fairly high. That's not that much different than now, but the overall volume of calls is much greater now. Combined fire and rescue we must have finished out this year around 640, which is similar to last year. But anyway, one other thing you might note, and I'll back up, is I'm going to back up one slide. Look at the bridge going into town in 1971, right on Main Street. And now look at it in 1972. So that tells you what year the bridge was done going into Tamworth Village. So fast forward to June 1st, 2017 is when the fire department and the rescue squad join and become one. You know, over time, the rescue squad, EMS in general, just became more technical, more rules, more paperwork, more record requirement. And eventually the Board of Selectmen felt that the town might be better served if the rescue squad became part of the fire department. So they approached the Board of Fire Wards and asked if they would be willing to take over that responsibility. And the Board of Fire Wards met with the rescue squad members and the fire department members. And although it wasn't universal, most members thought that it would probably be best in the long run. So agreed. And so as of June 1, 2017, the two departments became one Tamworth Fire Rescue Department under the jurisdiction of the Board of Fire Wards. And the selectmen get rid of one headache. So some of the things we do: fire prevention, life safety. I'll let you read all of that, but that's just some things that popped into my mind. As I said, the first job is fire prevention, but it's a wide range of things. It's not just fires, for sure. And this is, I guess, some slides of some of the maintenance things we do, some training stuff. First, yeah, this was cleaning out the Millbrook cistern. Hartley Well often graciously donates the use of their equipment to help us out. That's why they're there. They're not, we didn't hire them. John Hartley just brings the thing over because it would be helpful and helps us out. This is just the inside of that cistern. It's just a concrete tank. There's perforated pipes under it that come from underneath Millbrook, and there's 3 or 4 feet of stone. So the water just comes in by gravity and fills this thing up. Pipes are laid in stone and fabric. This is just another hydrant project. This is the hydrant across from Mountain View Service Center on Route 16 in Chicago. You can see the old pipe up here that was put in. I don't know when that was put in. I didn't take time to look it up, but it was a long, it was in the mid 60s. And the pipe was put in not that far down. And so over the years, as the pipe became brittle, it was only Schedule 20 plastic. The frost started to break it. And after it broke the second or third time, we said, all right, we got to replace that. So when we replaced it, we went deeper below frost, which also had the added benefit of being below the water level of the pond all the way to the road. So it makes priming the pump, for those of you who are familiar, I saw Willie Farnham's name, I know he's familiar, not having to prime that, 150 feet of 6-inch line saves a lot of time because that's full all the way out to the road. So we're only actually priming now the hydrant standpipe itself. So that's a big plus. And this is just that same project. This was done basically with volunteer labor, almost all volunteer labor. That's the town's backhoe. Oh, I say almost volunteer because that's the chief running it and he's salaried, so he's getting paid. Everybody else is volunteer. Hartley Well donated the other backhoe. That's my dad driving it. We started out, we got most of the pipe out to the pond, and then the next day I took engine 1 over there and started pumping 1,500 gallons a minute at 4 a.m. John Hartley showed up around 7 a.m. with engine 4, which you can see. Engine 1's in front, a little hard to see. John showed up at 7 or so with engine 4, which began pumping 1,250 gallons a minute. And by 11:30, we had pumped over 1 million gallons of water, and it was low enough that we could put the pipe and a new strainer into the pond. This was another project. The sign at Chicago Station was all falling apart. So this is some of us mounting it on the Chicago Fire Station. It was made by Mr. Arnold's shop class at the Brett School. They made the sign. They did an awesome job too. I will say, anybody who's seen that, very impressive. This is one of our latest projects. Our large forestry vehicle was a 1976 government surplus thing that the Firemen's Club bought and essentially gave to the town. In an effort to update it, we got this, which is much newer. It's a 97, and we didn't have to pay anything for it. We just had to pay about $4,000 to get it here. So this is its delivery, and it got here in November of 21. And the members worked through the winter to get it ready for forest fire season. And this is inside South Tamworth Station. You can see the sides of the body have been removed. One of them gets cut down and shorter to make room for hose reel. One gets left off completely and a toolbox goes there. Yeah, this is cutting down one of the sides, making it shorter. These sides flip down the way they're made, which is great because this truck's pretty high. But flipping this side down, right behind that, we have stored a bunch of Indian tanks, and it puts them at a really nice height to put on your back. But the work at on this corner, we actually had to cut the original corner off because it came back a ways and we needed the room. So we cut it out. We used one of the pieces of steel, welded it back in, and it looks like a manufactured job. There's some talented people. Whenever you get a group of volunteers around, you never know, what talents different people have until you start doing stuff like this. That's my dad's old welder. This is a little bit further along in the project. You can see that shorter side's put on. There's a hose reel there, dead load of hose. The toolbox hasn't come yet. That's a 750-gallon poly tank. The pump, these reels were all on a skid unit off the old one. So we borrowed Windy Ridge's crane truck and picked it up and set it over in this one and drilled holes. And here it is at an actual fire. It still wasn't done, but it was usable. And we had a brush fire, a forest fire on Hollow Hill Road. And here it is sitting next to the brand new grant-funded forestry truck. So, this truck's really nice, this new one, but it's only carrying 300 gallons of water, and it's much smaller, obviously. This military truck carries 750 gallons of water and has a lot of tools all around it. So they make a good pair. But they say we're using it all during forest fire season last year, even though it's not done, and there's still some things to do with it. This is one of our members, Nick Colcord, made this winch mount. We bought the winch. He made this mount and mounted it up. And this is painting the cab. We decided we didn't want to spend a ton of money on paint on a brush truck that's going to plow out through the trees. So we got, I think it was 13 cans of Rust-Oleum to do the cab. So we'll move on to training. So I always like to say, because sometimes we get new people on the department or whatever, and they think because it's snowing or it's cold out, we might not do the training we planned. And I always say we respond to calls in all kinds of weather, so we train in all kinds of weather. This is hose line training one night. This is another training. This was part of I think it was a Thursday night, and then we had Saturday and Sunday of one weekend, all right together. And this was an exercise to practice getting a person who'd fell through a floor. The scenario was into the basement. As you can tell, this really isn't into the basement. What we did was, since we had already cut a hole in the second floor, practicing roof venting, we decided to pretend that's the first floor and this is the basement. So we put a 185-pound training dummy in what we're calling the basement. And the firefighters had to go down, put an air mask on them that's attached to a long hose. So the air tank is actually up on what we're pretending to be the first floor. They go down, they get the air mask on him. Right here, they're putting what's called a handcuff knot. It's very simple, quick knot. Not very comfortable if you were conscious and being lifted by it, but it'll get you out and potentially save your life. So these guys are pulling the 185-pound person up, and just once in a while I'll throw some names in just because these people. That's Harry Remick, that's John Hartley, obviously. Previous picture, I think that's my sister, Marcia Colkert. I don't know who the other person is. That always looks like me to me because those are my old clothes that we put on the training dummy, but they're part way up. And now the hard part's done. Get that body over there. It gets a lot easier. But anyway, that's one of our former captains, Dan Teriak. So this is another evolution. This is getting an injured person out the second floor window. And it's all about technique. If you look closely, the firefighter isn't actually lifting the person. It isn't actually carrying the person. It's sliding the person down. This person happens to be smaller, but in a similar exercise, I've carried a 240. I shouldn't say carry because I'm not actually carrying them. I've taken a 240-pound person down a ladder by myself. It's all about the technique. And I just want to point out, since it's training, we take safety pretty seriously. We bother to tie off the ladder. There's actually a waist belt with a rope up here around the patient. Obviously, in real life, there wouldn't be this. This is Dan again, and he's just belaying the person down just as a safety. He's not holding pressure on it, but we don't want to get hurt training. And here's another exercise, and this is called head first ladder bailouts. And what this is for is so that for the firefighters, you're on a second or third story, whatever, and you got to bail out quick. Usually you're bailing out because of some, backdraft type situation or whatnot, and you want to stay low, below the flames and the smoke. So you go out head first as we practice, and we teach 2 and 4, we call it, and I drill that into people's heads so they won't forget. And what that means is this guy's right arm happens to be me, but this guy's right arm is going around the second rung down. He's going to put his forearm right around it. So that's right by his elbow. And his other hand, his left hand, is going on the 4th rung down. And so this is somebody halfway through the maneuver. This is Matt Bowman, actually, halfway through the maneuver. And you can see what he's doing. He bends his legs at the knees to get his feet through the window, pivots 180 degrees until his feet are below him on the ladder. And there's John Hartley again. And this is completing the maneuver. I didn't take these pictures for this purpose. Well, I didn't take these pictures at all because that's actually me up there. But so to show that evolution, had 2 different people. And we also have junior firefighters who are between the ages of 14 and 18. Like I said, back when I was a kid, you could start at 13, but now you can't start till 14. It's again, some insurance rule, some legislative rule, but so with them, in addition to training with the adult members, sometimes they have their own training. And in this exercise, we're teaching the young firefighters how to climb a rope without a mechanical ascender using 2 different length prussiks. And so at this point, this slide's showing that the junior firefighter has slid the long prusik loop that his left foot is in up the rope to the other prusik loop that is attached to his harness. So right now he's sitting on his harness. He's lifting his leg up, sliding that long prusik loop up to the one that's holding his harness. Then he pushes down with his left foot, stands up, and now he's going to take the prusik loop that was holding his harness, and he's going to slide that up. So we try to make sure our junior firefighters, learn useful stuff so that they're useful to us, and we try to make it fun. And this is just a couple pictures of some confined space training, trying to repower. And we need to be prepared to rescue people from confined spaces, because people go in there and they work on these things, and occasionally somebody gets hurt. This is a piece of equipment that they have to go in and do maintenance of with a pine tree power. And this is somebody inside. I think that's actually my son Michael. And then I think this is Thomas Welch coming out. Another type of training we do, this is ice rescue training on Chicago Lake. And in this picture, you can see there's a rope going out to him, but this firefighter has gone out, broke through the thin ice till he got solid enough ice and got himself up onto it. And the purpose of this was to get him used to working in the suit and see how difficult it is to get up onto the ice when you reach the bottom. And you'll notice that all the ropes and the line tender, there's lots of ropes involved in this. And I want to just point out the line tender has to wear a life jacket. He's not going in the water, hopefully. And here's some vehicle extrication training at Rickers. We're fortunate to have Rickers Auto Salvage in town, because they're always willing to provide us with whatever we need for training. And they'll set stuff up for us like this. They set this up with their loader. In this extrication training, we're using the Jaws of Life, our hydraulic cutters, hydraulic ram, and our new strut, stabilizer struts. That's what this is. They're quite new at this point. And this is our meeting calendar. And I've clarified this to say this is our new meeting calendar for 23. It actually hasn't been approved by the Board of Fire Wards, but it most likely will be tomorrow night, because it's different than what we were doing, but it's been brought to the EMS side of the house and the fire side of the house, and everybody seems to be in favor of it. So I'm sure the Board of Fire Wards will approve it tomorrow night at their meeting. But it shows our meetings. A certain type of meeting is always on the same day of the week during the same week of the month. So for instance, Fire Wards meetings are always the first Thursday of the month. And they have been as long as I can remember, in all honesty. This is what this ropes and knots, we could consider that fire training. That's the second Thursday of the month. This EMS training, that's the second Monday of the month. Fourth Thursday is another fire training. And the first Monday here was, this is an ad, the officers meeting. Previously, it would just start at 1900 to 7 o'clock and would be business meeting. And we're going to work tool maintenance into it too. So this is just our department stuff. People attend outside training monthly. There's some special things that people do. But this is our in-house. And before we get to the end of the slides, I just want to touch on how to join. I guess this sparked some interest out there. It's basically you fill out an application, come to a Fire Wards meeting and bring your application. You can get an application by calling the fire station or catching the chief there, or coming to any one of these meetings. Pretty much any Thursday night we're there, and 2 Mondays. You have to we'll have a background check done. We pay for that. We'll pay for the physical if you don't have insurance, provided you pass background check and the physical. Then you just got to come to meetings and trainings and calls. There's a 6-month probation, and it's in our procedures that we want people to obtain State of New Hampshire Fire 1 or emergency medical responder certification within 2 years of acceptance as a probationary member. It's a little bit contingent on availability of classes. The ICS system class stuff, most of that's online. That's easy, but the Fire One and the, whether it's emergency medical responder or EMT certification, we don't really want to send people out of state for these things. So if there isn't a class more local, then we might extend that 2 years, but that's our goal. And this is our recruiting poster that J.C. Bowman did up and posted some around town. If I could leave it sort of on the screen and stop sharing, I would, but I want to stop sharing because I'm hoping people have some questions and we can have some discussion. So we should be back to the regular Zoom screen now. I did that correctly.
Thank you, Jim. And if anyone would like to unmute themselves and just jump on in and have conversations, you are 100% welcome. I think I'll start first and just say one of the things that really stuck with me is how many people volunteer to help the Tamworth Rescue and Fire out. It seems like we owe a big thanks to Hartley Well, and you mentioned so many different people that just give their time. That's really nice to know about as a townsperson. So thanks. Anyone else? Go ahead. Jean, I see you wanted to go.
I raised my hand for Nick.
Hi, Jim. That was great. Thank
Yeah, it
you.
was.
Yeah.
I missed the first part, doing dishes, but I'm wondering, can you give us a sense of how many calls you respond to each year, or a month, or whatever is easier? So what's the nature of those calls for the most part?
So the calls for this year, somewhere around 640, which is pretty similar to the past couple of years. The majority are medical related calls. You can look in your town annual reports. We usually put that in there, the statistics in there. So I can't really recite all of them. It's funny, we might go 3 days. It's kind of a long one, but sometimes we get to go 3 days without a call. And then another day, you might have 4 calls in the afternoon. I mean, we ran out of ambulances last Friday. I was skiing with my daughter, so I was not in town. But there were multiple calls in the area, and they ran out of ambulances. So somebody had to take the fire truck they brought to the call, drive up to our central fire station, get our ambulance, take it down to it was a motor vehicle accident that they were at with a fire truck, and put 2 people from the accident into our ambulance and take them to the hospital. And then another member had to drive one of the other trucks that a different fire member had brought to the call back to the station, and they had to shuttle people back and forth. So it kind of it can get really busy. But I'm not going to tell you that we're doing, we don't do 6 calls every day.
Yeah.
But the total is around 640 a year. So I mean, do the math. I mean, it's.
So Jim, when does fire and rescue always have to respond when there's an ambulance call? When does the ambulance service respond as opposed to Tamworth?
So both for a medical call, what I call a strictly medical call, which is, so it's not somebody who fell off their roof. It's not somebody who's in a car accident. It's just somebody who has a medical issue. So on a strictly medical call, both Tamworth Fire Rescue and Action Ambulance, they're our provider now, our contracted provider, they're both toned to it. Our people, our Tamworth Fire Rescue people, sort of, they listen to the call, the type of call. Each call comes through from 911 with we call it a determinant, basically a severity level, which is arrived at by an algorithm that the 911 dispatchers use as to the severity of it. So our people will listen and decide whether they think it's something that a two-person ambulance crew can handle all by themselves, or maybe they need some more help. And so there are calls in that, I'll just call it 640. There are calls that maybe no one from Tamworth Fire Rescue went on. There's not a lot of them, but there are some. And, people have to use their judgment and balance their work and their family and whatever with going. Because even though as of July 1st, as I mentioned, they're paid hourly now, it's still essentially volunteer whether you're going to go or not. So, if you're at work and your employer doesn't allow you to leave, then you're not leaving because that's your job. So yeah, there's some judgment used as to how many people go. If you look at, how many people respond on calls, there's a lot more people on a building fire than there is on just a medical call.
Thank you very much. That's great.
I
Hey,
have
Jim. Oh,
Yeah.
Go. Can I go? Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
go ahead, Bob.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
I don't have a camera, sorry. Jim, I was just wondering, for many years, I've had to caretake a couple of houses that have security systems, and there's been a fair amount of false alarms over the years. And that must happen all over town, and I'm wondering if you find that fairly frustrating, but there's really, what else can you do? You have to go.
Yes, you're right on all accounts. It doesn't just happen to the places that you take. Larry Nickerson, I see more often than it would be nice to, at those sorts of things. He has a lot in the Chicago area. Yeah, this, we encourage people to have their systems maintained. That can help because sometimes it's just dirty detectors, smoke detectors and CO detectors. Bugs get in them, spiders make cobwebs, whatever, it can set them off. So, we try to encourage people to have their systems maintained. It's not a guarantee that they'll never have a false alarm. But yes, in all honesty, it can be frustrating, you're trying to get something else done and now you got to go to this thing. And the bad part about it is that it can make the firefighters very complacent. And so, we try to preach to the firefighters, don't get complacent. And we also try to tell the people who have these systems, if your alarm goes off and you spot a fire, call. Don't just rely on the system. Call 911 and say you got a fire, say what it is. Because that does a couple things. First off, your alarm might not dial out that time if you're unlucky. And so we may never get the fire alarm. But the other thing is those people listening, when our dispatch gets that call from 911 that says there's a confirmed fire, they're going to put out another tone, a first alarm tone. Our people are going to hear it, and it's going to get a lot more people and equipment going rather than waiting for the first fire person to get there, see the fire and say, hey, we got a building fire, strike a first alarm. So that's something that we try to tell the owners of these places or the caretakers, don't rely on the alarm. If you know there's an issue, call 911 and say what it is. And they say, we had an instance, I'll just touch on the complacency thing. We had an instance at, what's now Sonata Housing over there in owned by them, Chicago Woods. I guess they're called an independent living facility. And inside of like a week, we had like 3 false alarms during the night. And you know, the first alarm, I'm just throwing out numbers because it's too long ago for me to remember accurately. Like 6 people showed up. You know, the first person who gets there says over the air that there's no fire and we're checking for the cause. So 6 people show up. The second one, we're down to 4 people. The third one, we're down to like 1 or 2 people. Then we get another call, another one, a 4th one. And I was on my way there when dispatch comes back and says, there's a confirmed fire. And we had told the manager who lived over there, you know, make sure if there's a real fire, call. And they did, thankfully. And that got more people coming and we were able to save the building, obviously. But it was a real fire. It had started in I call it the common room, where they gather and watch TV and whatever. It started in there, got hot enough to break the window, went out up into the eaves and into the attic, and then and started spreading throughout. And one of the fire doors to that room had been propped open. So that whole left wing, as you face it, was filled with hot gases that were hot enough to melt all the light fixtures. You know, people that might have had a little bulletin board, the papers were like blackened. So we had to go in and search that whole place. At that time, we only had 1 master key. So I was keying one side and letting a crew go that side. And then me and the guy with me went the other side. And we had to go check that whole place for people. But there are a number of lessons learned there. One is for us not to get complacent. Number 2, don't prop fire doors open, because if the fire door hadn't been propped open, that whole wing wouldn't have got so much smoke and heat down it. It didn't go the other way. The fire door in the other direction was closed. It didn't go that way. So yeah, alarms can be annoying, but the sooner we know, the better off we are. And that's key to saving anything. And we hate showing up to a fully involved building fire because, you know, sometimes I'd rather just stand back and let it burn and there'd be less to clean up. But we can't do that by law, because if we were to do that, people have insurance, the insurance wouldn't cover it. We've got to try to put it out, save what we can save, and it also preserves evidence for the investigation. But yeah, there are times when, boy, I wish I could just sit in my pickup and let it burn. But we can't do that. We always got to do our best to put it out and do an investigation.
Doug, you had a question, Doug, and then there's another question. Somebody's interested how many firefighters and EMS people there are. But then if you want to go ahead, Doug.
Okay, well, my question might be a short one, or might be, I'm interested in the history going back through the annual reports, Jim. When you did that, what I'm wondering about the budget for fire rescue and so forth. What percentage of the whole town budget was that? Has it grown over the years or stayed steady, gotten smaller, up and down? What factors influence how much of the town budget it takes up?
I honestly don't know. That would be a good research project for somebody. I don't know. My sense is that, you know, as relatively speaking, most things kind of go up the same amount. I mean, on the really broad scale. So I'm thinking that percentage wise, it's probably not too much different, but I don't know that. Honestly, that would be a cool statistic to know. I would be, if you happen to do some research or you know somebody,
Okay.
I would love to know the answer to that myself. Because as I said, you know, on the fire side, I've said, fine, if you can't justify that you're saving insurance money by investing in the fire department, then there's no reason to do it. Just my life would be a lot easier. Just don't do it. On the EMS side, it's a little tougher because, like I say, funerals are cheaper than hospital stays, so you wouldn't do anything. Nobody's up to that.
The other question, Jim, was how many firefighters and EMS people are on the department right now?
So I'm going to say right now, and it's always like in a constant state of flux, but I'm gonna say there's about 25 people on the roster now. But to give you a sense, prior to COVID, I did a 3-year average of how many people showed up for our regular monthly fire trainings, not EMS trainings, but fire trainings. And that 3-year average was 13 people per night. And, well, we didn't even do some trainings for a while during COVID. Since COVID, it's been more in the 8 to 10 range for a fire training. And there's more people involved in the fire training. The EMS trainings are more apt to be in the 5 to 8. It's a little less on the EMS side. But a lot of people are both, to make that clear. I mean, a lot of us are both. And now it's one organization that we all belong to, the same organization, but some people are fire trained, some people are EMS trained, and some people are both.
Would you like to have more?
Absolutely.
How many would be ideal?
Well, if all 25 were as active as, I'll say, the most active 10, that would be super. That would be perfect. If we have, and I'm just throwing this number out there, wouldn't take me too long to throw some names down of the really active people. But I'm going to say it's about 10. Yeah, if we had 25 really active people, yeah, everything would be, maintained in tip-top shape. Training would be, better, and life would be really good.
Okay, so everybody out here on this, there you go. What's your next?
Right. So,
next
but you
thing.
can't expect people to all be as active as, I'll say, the top 10. So you have to accept that, you're going to have a bigger number of people in order to, and out of that, you're going to have some people are super active and some that are less active. So, I work out of town a lot, less so since COVID, but, and even before COVID, I work out of town a lot, and I make like 90 calls, 80 to 90 calls. I wasn't the top one. For years, Harry Remick would kill us all. Harry, well, he worked in town, right? He had his own business. He worked in town. This is before he was semi-retired. He was around a lot. For a bunch of years, he wasn't somebody who drove fire engines. And finally, I was kind of young to be doing that at the time. I convinced him, I said, Harry, you got to learn to do it. And he did. And he's probably put more miles on our fire trucks than anybody else, to be honest. But
Does anyone else have any other questions for Jim? Comments?
What's the future look like for volunteer fire departments?
well, as I said, we're technically not volunteer anymore. Because starting July 1st, we get paid hourly. We're considered a call fire department now. And like I say, the distinction is volunteers, there's no hourly set rate. Prior to July 1st, we had this volunteer incentive program thing where we had a stipend. So we put a certain amount of money in the budget every year. We kept track of the number of events people went to and how long those events were. I call them events because they might be training, they might be a call, might be a work detail to maintain equipment or to fix something. And at the end of the year, we would divide that sum of money up by how many, I'll just say, event hours there were. So there's never an expectation that you are going to, how much you're going to get. Sometimes an event was worth like $3, and some years it might be worth 10. In the end, we upped that amount to try to encourage people. It was coming out close to 20 for an event. But now we're hourly. And so, like I said, there's nothing forcing you to leave your dinner and go to the call. That's kind of you're volunteering to do it. But once you do, we're tracking your hours and you're going to get paid. So we're actually technically a call department now and not a volunteer department.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Diane.
I just wanted, excuse my voice, I'm sorry. I just wanted to point out that people spend a lot of time training to become firefighter 1 certified or to become an EMT, to keep their CPR up. All the different, there's a lot of different things that you need to keep up to date on. Just a basic EMT class is like 180 hours, something like that. I don't know what the firefighter 1 hourly class is now.
It's pretty similar. It's a little less, but it's pretty similar. No, we're not in the same room.
Yeah.
We're in the same house. She's in her office. I'm in my office. I can only hear her through this computer. But she keeps tabs on it. She's one of our fire captains, and obviously she keeps us in line. And if I forget to, I told her, I said, if I forget to say something you think is really important, just say something. But yeah, this, I don't want to make it sound too onerous because I want people to want to do it. But yeah,
There's help to organize it.
there is a commitment to doing it, but it's fairly exciting too. It's not, helping people gives most of us a good feeling. The false alarm things, like Bob Streeter said, can be a little annoying. But when you actually go and you help somebody because they've fallen and they can't get up, or they're something started on fire in their bathroom, and you run in and you put it out with your air pack on and save the house, that's a good reward. That I can think of situations like that 40 years ago that I still remember. It's so like they were yesterday, and that's sort of what keeps some of us going. But on the other hand too, it's kind of, there's some exciting stuff. I don't know if you noticed in that, and I can put it up again if you want. You don't need to look at me all the time, but on that poster, recruiting poster, there's a helicopter there. That's the South Tamworth Fire Station. So we had, I'm gonna say, and I might be off, but within like 2 or 3 months, the most, we landed the Dart helicopter next to the South Tamworth Fire Station twice for different reasons. I think that when the picture was taken, it was for an accident on Bunker Hill Road. Seriously hurt person. We have a picture somewhere of 2 helicopters at the same time on the road in Route 16 over just north of Rosie's near Maple Road for a bad car accident. So, it's exciting. It's not always fun, but that there are calls that it's exciting and can be rewarding.
Thanks for everything you do, Jim and Diane and everyone else that's part of it. We are really fortunate to have such a great fire department right now, volunteer call. Does anyone else have anything else they want to say before we say goodbye to Jim?
Yeah, this is Willie Farnham. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Jim. Thank you for your presentation. It was interesting to remind me of some of the things that have happened in the past. And I just want to comment that one of the problems I think the fire department faces as we age in community, it is somewhat of a young person's game. When you're in your 60s, it's time to stop thinking about climbing on ladders, Jim. So
Nobody told my dad that.
Yeah, well, I know there's a lot of people that, like myself, that just don't listen. But and the way to get young people involved is hard when we have an older demographics in town. So that's
Yep.
one of the things everybody says, oh, we don't want school kids, we don't want this, we don't want that. Well, there's your people that serve in your community. And we got to be careful that we don't outrun ourselves.
That's a really good point. In having jobs in town, where people work in town, whether it's home industry or whatever it is, just having people around that are in that age group, the working class or whatever age group. We need, as a town, we need to keep in mind that those are the people who should be doing this stuff.
Right. I mean, I was fortunate when I was young, I was able to work in town. I worked at the store in the village, and Lottie and Earl said, the whistle blows, go ahead and go. And I was very fortunate to have that. It meant a lot. So. And
Yeah.
Rose Mill was the same way. If the whistle went off, the people at Rose Mill, they'd shut the wheel off and go help do what they needed to do. So a lot of people have spent a lot of time helping others.
Right.
Thank you.
That's what makes a community work,
Yep. They
John.
don't always agree, but you pull them out of the ditch anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Go ahead, John.
Just want to say thank you, Jim, for your service as well as this presentation. That it was good, and glad to have had the opportunity to see it. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, Willie makes a good point that, it's really too bad. I'm just kind of getting off topic here, but it's really too bad that it seems like so much of the world is polarized like it is. It's if we all thought the same way and agreed the same way, it would be boring. One thing I love about this town is that there's so much variety in culture in this town. Obviously I associate a ton with the fire EMS world. Those people, I see them multiple times a week, all the time. But, I love going to the Contra Dance second Saturday every month, see John Wheeler there and see, Amy Barrier there and all these other people, and you get to dance with all these people. Going to the Barnstormers, I call it, getting cultured, because my normal part of my life is working for DOT in the construction world with contractors and other engineers. And then, I have the fire EMS part. But like I say, one thing I really like about this town is I don't have to go far to do a lot of other cool things too.
Well, maybe your talk will.
I know that
Maybe your.
I know that when I'm dancing with, I don't know, say Katie Thompson, we politically probably don't agree on everything, but I'll bet in reality we agree on a whole lot, and we're having fun together. You don't have to agree on everything to get along and enjoy each other's company and so forth.
Well, thanks, Jim. Thanks so much. I think we all agree here tonight that we're really grateful to what you do, for all the people you've got helping you, all the people in town that volunteer their time in the myriad ways that they do to support the fire department. So thank you for your time, and may you get a couple nights of great sleep without calls.
Without calls, sure.
Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome.
We'll see you all next week.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks again.
Yeah.
Diane, I'll say thanks. Jim disappeared quick, but I want to say to him, thank you so much. It was really lovely to spend time with him tonight. I think everyone really enjoyed it.
Thank you for organizing these too. Good night.
It's really nice. All right, good night.